Hey everybody, welcome to the Bare Root Project. I'm your host Dave Kearns, and I just want to say I hope you enjoy the new format. We're adding video, so if there's any little stats or any little graphs or anything like that that might help you, I have a chance to give that to you. You also get to see how excited and how big of a nerd I am about this stuff. That way, you can feel a little bit better about being a nerd too. Alright, let's get into this. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Bare Root Project. I'm super excited about today's show. You know why? We're talking about the basic needs of trees and shrubs. So that means by the end of the video, you should have a pretty good idea when you look at a plant to decide whether the basic needs, what I call the primary needs of a tree or a shrub or a plant, are being met. So without further ado, welcome to the Bare Root Project. The three bare minimum things that a plant needs is water, space, and oxygen. So if we can give a plant those three things, we know that the bare minimums for plant life is there. However, we need soil and nutrients too, because here at Kearnsy, we don't want just a living plant, we want healthy plants. So, water, space, nutrients, and soil. Now, if I'm coming off a bit cynical here, it's because I do consultations for a living. And when it's like 35 degrees out and I'm standing in the shade with somebody underneath a tree, and they're like, "Oh, well, why is my tree not doing well?" And I'm kind of looking at the three primary needs. The first one I'm looking at is water. First question I have is, "Well, how often do you water your tree?" The often answer is, "Well, it's mature. It's already been planted. It's been there for 20 years. What do I need to water it for?" And it's like, I just got to hold myself back and just say, okay, we need water. Plants need water. Animals need water. Water's like the the one thing that we all definitely need. So when we're watering a tree, we want to make sure that we're giving it an adequate amount. So obviously, when the tree's transpiring, meaning it's photosynthesizing, hello grade 7 science memories, it's like we need water to help drive that, right? So when it's 35 degrees out, the tree's not transpiring, it's not actively growing. So we want to look at when we water just as much as how much we water. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. Plants need water. Trees need water. Shrubs, trees, they're all plants. Obviously, trees need more water than, say, like a small house plant. But when we're looking at how much to water something, we need to pay attention to how consistent we are. If you give a plant like water once a month, well, that's okay if that's what it needs once a month. However, if you're giving your tree water maybe once every 5 years, just in drought conditions, we're starting to look at the differences in what one's abilities to water is versus another. Now, when we look at too much water, effectively what's happening is we're overloading the soil with water, which pushes the oxygen out, which means that if the water has somewhere to drain, then the oxygen can come back in, right? Now, what we're dealing with here is just too much water. So what happens is the water goes up into the canopy. The inside of the canopy there, it's got shade leaves. So they're used to a certain amount of shade. They only have so much ability to burn off water. But the plant needs oxygen, so it's trying to burn that water off. And what happens is we get this like gross, soupy, kind of yellowish green interior. That's no bueno. That's telling us, hey, you're watering it too much. It's waterlogging that interior foliage. By the time that that water gets out towards the tips, there's enough sunlight to burn it off. There's not as much water because the interior of the canopy's already taken up a lot of that water. So we get that interior dieback. Option number 2, we don't give it enough. Well, I think we all know what happens. Obviously, we get kind of dry, wilty, kind of green leaves. And we see that dieback or that defoliation from the tips inward. So, if you're consistently not giving your tree enough water, it's not getting enough precipitation, whatever the case may be, effectively what you're going to see is dieback from the tips in. So, what pattern are you? You got dieback from the interior out? Maybe you're watering too much. Or maybe you got dieback from the tips in. Maybe you don't even have dieback, but you just notice that the foliage is stunted year after year. There's a lot of clues that we can use to figure out if we're watering too much or not enough. But those are our two main patterns. So, which one are you? So, the second part of this is, when do we water? Well, when it's 35 degrees out, sun's blaring down, you don't want to go outside, your trees don't want to be out there either, is what I always tell my clients. They go dormant throughout the day, right? If the growing conditions aren't ideal, why waste energy? So, trees are most active, plants are most active when temperatures are cooler, but there's lots of sunlight and moisture. Think early in the morning when there's dew on the grass. So, if you're waking up around 5 to 7 a.m. and you're leaving, no later than 10:30, why not turn the sprinklers on, turn them off when you go to leave? Alternatively, if you kind of missed the boat on that, you could do it again in the afternoon, right? Think when you come home, you start cooking supper, it's starting to cool down a little bit, you turn that sprinkler on. You turn it off when you're done doing the dishes. Either way, we're looking at about an hour or maybe an hour and a half of your sprinkler. You do that like once, maybe twice a week. That's a really good starting point. Remember that we're looking for signs and symptoms of these trees and shrubs and plants having too much water or not enough. But we want to be consistent so that we know that it's not the inconsistent of, oh, too much, not enough, gosh, I think it's dying, I better drown it. We can take that out of the equation. So which one are you? You watering in the morning or in the evening? Because we're going to do that during the growing season. Maybe once or twice a week. But remember, that's just a starting point. Space. Not like space, but like space. It's really important. I like my space. I'm sure you like your space. So I'm doing this on a video. So I'm not at your property going like, you didn't give your trees enough space. Well, now I'm not giving you space. How does it make you feel? I wouldn't do that. That's crazy. But, it's important. We need space, everybody. So, I break it down like this. We look at above ground space. Everybody recognizes like that tree that's growing underneath the power line comes up, it kind of splits to grow around the power lines. We can avoid that through planting, We have a cedar that's growing up against someone's house. It's growing up into the eaves trough. Well, we can plan for that. Maybe we plant it a little further out so that it doesn't interact with that. Maybe we do reduction pruning, right? So we can mitigate and we can plan around. Those are two important parts of my job anyways. And I want that to be a part of your job when you're kind of managing your property. So the second part is, hey, root space. Have you ever repotted a plant? It's because the root system needed more space. It outgrew the pot. So if we plant a tree in the front of your property, is it going to run out of root space? These are things that I want you to consider for sure. And we have to remember that the root system, it's a spreading root system. When a tree's, 50 years old, very seldomly in my area do we have a huge taproot system that goes down 20 feet. That doesn't exist. It's usually a shallower root, spreading root system. So we got to make sure that we give it space, at least the spread of the canopy. So how much space does your tree have? Healthy soils have oxygen in them. It's not like the plant's sitting there drinking up the oxygen, but the biology in the soil, all the organisms in there, they need oxygen. Remember we were talking about how water comes in and displaces that oxygen? No bueno? Okay. What about soil compaction? We have a piece of equipment driving across the same area all the time. It's compacting that soil. pushes oxygen out. We need oxygen in our soils, guys. And if your lawn care guy's like, oh, you really need to aerate your yard, and you've got a bunch of dead, hard, compacted areas, he's not lying to you. I know, I've done it. I've walked up to people and I've been like, I really suggest that you do this. It would be great for your yard. It would be great for your trees. I give them all these benefits of aeration. And they kind of look at me like, okay, snake salesman. It's like, okay, I please water it then. Because as that water, remember, as that water drains through, it's going to suck that oxygen in as well. It also helps kind of reduce that soil compaction. So, that leads us to my favorite part, soils. Sorry. I get really excited about soil. It's like everything we're talking about, everything we've talked about, it all comes down to soil. How much oxygen in the soil? How much space in the soil? Think about that poor potted plant. You ever fertilize it? You ever just wonder what it would be like to go and buy a bunch of food, put it in your house, and then just never go out and buy food again? It's like, yeah, you're going to be eating like cardboard by the end of it. So, what do we do to help our plants? I mean, how do we help our soils? How do we make them healthy? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Let's get into it. So, remember we were talking about soil space? Well, soil space is important. It gives us oxygen, all that stuff, right? Now, that oxygen and the water in the soil space allows for organic material to be composted, right? We have living organisms in our soil. They're super helpful. I love them. See how crazy I get? I love soil organisms. I wish everyone walked around and was super snooty and was like, I have the nicest soil in town. You should see all the living organisms. I want you to pick that soil up, look at it, and then immediately throw it on the ground because you see something that grosses you out. And I'm here to tell you, there's stuff that you can't see that shouldn't gross you out. Because that stuff makes our healthy soil useful. And that's what we need, healthy soil. Because without healthy soil, we don't have healthy plants. So say it with me now. I'm going to do my best to have healthy soil. I'm going to try not to use mined fertilizers if we can use organic alternatives. We're going to try to use compost if we're affordable, right? Expenses are going up. Maybe you can go to like the city of Saskatoon where I live, has a free composting program. You can go pick up a garbage can or two worth of compost for free. Spread that across your lawn. Water the junk out of it. Watch out, pH on all that. But hey, an easy, environmentally affordable and responsible way of making sure there's nutrients in that soil, right? So give those organisms something to eat. If you've got a depleted yard with low organics, that's a good place to start. So what does your soil look like? You got lower organics? You got compacted soil? Or do you have really healthy soil? How many worms do you see in your garden when you're gardening? That's always a good way to find out whether you have healthy soil or not. Because they need oxygen too. How many times have you looked at a fertilizer bag and you looked at those three numbers and kind of went, I don't know what that means. Well, what those numbers are percentages. Say the number on the bag is a 30-10-10 general tree and shrub fertilizer. Okay, 30% of what's in that bag is nitrogen. That helps with green things. Green growth in the spring. Great time to throw some fertilizer at it. High nitrogen content. Then we're looking at potassium and phosphorus, or phosphorus and potassium, I should say. So we're looking at NPK. Green, healthy roots. We need phosphorus just to be a healthy plant. It helps kind of live day to day, right? Potassium, same thing, but it's vital for root growth, which is happening year round. So what we want to make sure is on that bag when we're looking at it and it says, hey, I'm a 38-8 slow release, I know that that's 30% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, 8% potassium. Whew, what a mouthful. So, the end of the day in the spring, we're going to use a high nitrogen content, right? In the fall, all that nutrients is going down into the plant. stimulating root growth. That means we're going to need a bit more phosphorus and potassium. So in the fall, if you need to, and you're still like on the I'm trying to increase the quality of my soil here kind of kick, then what I want you to look at is lowering the nitrogen content and increasing the phosphorus and potassium content. Very seldomly can you go to a store and be like, I want 38-8 fertilizer, and they give you a 38-8 fertilizer. These numbers are going to vary. So if you're looking for more information, I'm going to leave a bunch of information below. I've written an article that explains all of this for you, but nutrients are kind of the last part of the puzzle. It's what helps make that soil healthy, because if we don't have those organisms breaking down organic material, we don't have those nutrients returning to the soil, which means that we have to bring them in. That's fine. But what do we bring in? Well, general tree and shrub fertilizers are great. They're going to vary in micronutrients. If you're looking at like general garden plants, annuals, they're going to use a little bit more nitrogen than they would phosphorus and potassium. You can look at all sorts of different products, but generally speaking, for anything smaller than a shrub, I wouldn't recommend anything over like a 5-5-5, well diluted in water. And remember, we want to spread that across that root system. We want to increase the amount of space that that plant can thrive in, because that means it has more oxygen, more water, more nutrients. So I hope that now you can look at the plant and kind of go, oh yeah, it's too much water, it's not enough oxygen, and I should probably give it a little bit more nitrogen just to kind of help increase its ability to photosynthesize. If not, hey, leave a comment below. Send me an email. Let me know. I do consulting. I can help you. Ask me questions. After today's podcast, there's like 6 questions I want you to ask yourself next time you're looking at a plant or a tree or a shrub and you're asking yourself, are the primary needs being met? Well, the first thing you're asking yourself is, did I water it too much or not enough? Remember, too much water equals yellow interior. Not enough means die back from the tips inward, right? The second question you're going to ask yourself is, does the plant have enough space below and above ground? Remember, root space is just as important as canopy space. If you have a plant that's not doing so well, maybe it's being outcompeted and it doesn't have enough soil space for it. So, remember, compacted soils limit soil space just as much as, say, a small pot would. The third question you're going to ask yourself is there an adequate amount of oxygen in the soil? Remember, plants need to breathe, but not kind of the way that you think they do. We need oxygen in the soil. So, is there enough aeration done? Do we need to reduce compaction? Number 4, does the plant have healthy living soil? Remember, soils need to live. They need organisms in them. They need organic matter to support those organisms. So, a good healthy plant needs good healthy soil. Do you got it? Number 5, we're looking at the nutrients. Are your nutrient needs being met? Remember, NPK, those 3 numbers, green healthy roots. Have you fertilized your tree? Have you given your plant fertilizer? Remember to always read the label when you're working with fertilizers and always follow safety precautions. Number 6, did you enjoy yourself? Because this is a lot of work if you didn't enjoy yourself, so you better. Let me know.